Hello and welcome. My name is Peter. I'm the solo developer behind Growlery Games. This month was a bit more productive than the prior month. We're getting back into the swing of things, starting with finishing up the watering of crops that I was working on last time, and quite a few improvements to the Dark Forest, as well as beginning the player progression systems through experience, gaining experience and leveling, and getting skills and technologies. So let's just dive straight into it. So a couple of general updates first for anybody who's been following along. In my last video, I mentioned that things kind of slowed down a little bit because I was running for local office in my community. Unfortunately, I did not go too well. Not abysmal, but I lost that race. But silver lining means I have more time to focus back on Growler games and game development. Also, some more bad news. I mentioned several times that I had really been rushing to get my game to the point where I could do a Steam page and the initial announced trailer and stuff to apply and get into a festival. The festival isn't until February, but the application due date was in September. So it got me to get my Steam page up a little earlier than I probably otherwise would have, which overall is a good thing. I'm getting passive, wish lists just from it being out there, even though, I'm not doing too much marketing yet. I need to do some more, but I'm waiting to build up some content to be able to have a consistent flow. But I found out I didn't get into that, which is unfortunate. I didn't get into too many festivals with my previous game. I have higher hopes for Blood Builder. I am early on, so later on, next year, in like summer and fall, which is when there typically are a lot more festivals going on. I think we'll get into a few, but we'll see what happens there. What really sucked was it was kind of a 1-2 punch. I found out that I didn't get into a festival on Monday, and then the next day on a Tuesday was the election, and then I lost there too. But we're taking it in stride and we're moving forward. So the first major update is that I finished the watering of crops since the last video. In my last video, I went over the crop system that's now in Blood Builder, but watering crops hadn't been completed yet, and so it's now in there, including some placeholder animations. Now, kind of a side note and also kind of a design note. So the side note is that farming in Blood Builder is not the focus. It's a support activity to help with what you're doing in the inn, which is cooking and brewing to serve to patrons so that you can then harvest blood and serve to the vampires to get money and influence. But you can purchase all or most of the ingredients. We'll see in the end how it all fleshes out with balancing. But right now I envision that you're going to be able to purchase nearly all of the ingredients if you wanted to, instead of growing them. It'll be more expensive, and so you'd have to grind out earning money from crafting things and selling them. But I wanted to give a little bit of choice. So Blood Builder is not a farming sim, it's a light vampire life sim. Right, obviously not a realistic one. That's why I say light. And with that in mind, I also, since farming's not essential, it's just a support activity, I chose to have watering of crops optional as well. And so, unlike in some other games where if you don't water the crops, they'll die, in Blood Builder, if you plant your crops, you can totally forget them and then come back and harvest them when they're ready. But what watering does is it drastically accelerates the growth rate. So if you take the time to go and water your crops, and it doesn't even have to be every night, because every time you water the crops at the end of the night when it does its growth tick, it just we'll say doubles in value. So it speeds up the growth for that night. So you could water it a couple nights and then forget it the rest of the time, and it would still grow a little faster. But yeah, you can plant it and forget it. But if you take the time to water the crops, you'll harvest them a lot sooner, which means you'll progress in the inn a lot faster, because you'll have more ingredients to create more stuff to sell to more patrons, and feed into that whole cycle. So, like many other games that are in this farming, or like I said, Blood Bowl is not a farming sim, but in this farming life sim type genre, what the player's really fighting against is time management. What are you going to focus on and prioritize in each evening? And so for the watering of crops, it's not an essential thing that the player has to do, but it plays into that choice of how can you get the most out of the I want to say that the nights right now are about like 16 minutes or something like that long. So it's like in the 16 minutes that you have from when your vampire awakens to has to go back, to sleep in the coffin. What are you going to get done? And watering crops is something that you could ignore, but there are benefits. So it's all about time management and making choices in those 60 minutes. What's the most you can do with the time you have? So the part of the game I spent the most time on since over this past month is the Dark Forest. And so the Dark Forest is basically the dungeon, so to speak, within Blood Builder. There's an entrance, which is a single scene that will always remain the same. It'll have a couple important things in it, but when you go past that, you'll enter into the dungeon, and the dungeon's going to be, the Dark Forest is going to be procedural. Now, in my last video, just to take a step back, in my last video, I mentioned that I had to create actual level prefabs because of the way I was doing the crops. It made me realize that I needed to rework the architecture of the game. And because I had to create these new level prefabs and have every level inherit from them, I had to redo the levels that I already had. So it didn't take too long, maybe a couple hours. I recreated the Dark Forest entrance, which I already had. But then beyond that, I also added 2 new creatures for the Dark Forest, the doe and the buck. Obviously they're deer, and as best as I can artistically, they are based on red deer, which are native to the mountains in Romania. The doe is a passive mob, so when the player gets close to it just wants to run away. The buck has a charged attack, so if you get too close, it will come at you, and there's some threat there. But the deer collectively, and primarily the doe, are going to be a main staple of where the player gets game meat from to then bring back and use in dishes in the inn. Similar to the farming, there is going to be a market where you could purchase the meat, but it means that you need to grind out the gold doing other activities. So you don't have to actively do the hunting if you don't want to. It all goes back into kind of the time management, where you're going to put your energy and focus. So as I said, the Dark Forest itself is going to be procedural. I'm going to create the different zones that will be part of it, so it will be a finite number of arrangements. It won't be completely random, but hopefully you won't see too much repetitiveness until you've played the game for tens of hours. I tied the procedural nature of the Dark Forest to the phases of the moon, which is how I do the replenishing of resources in other areas. And so every full moon, the Dark Forest is going to reshuffle its zones. And I did it for a couple of reasons. One is just for atmospheric reasons. That's this dark, mysterious forest that clearly there's some unseen forces going on. You could easily get lost in it. And so every full moon, it kind of twists and bends into a new arrangement. But also, for gameplay, I wanted it to to be exciting when you went in and were looking for the resources that you needed, instead of just exploring it once, knowing, oh, there's iron here, there's the deer over there, and just running to whatever it is you're looking for. You actually have to explore it again, and part of its excitement and part of its time. Right, because if you have to explore it every week, now there's the risk reward for how you're spending your time, and you could run into enemies, and so I thought it was a lot more exciting than just having a static thing that once you knew where everything was, you could just beeline it to what you wanted. At first, I was gonna have it reshuffle every time you entered, but then I realized you could easily exploit that by just going in and out at the entrance and seeing if the stuff you wanted would spawn closer to the beginning of the forest. And so I tied it to the phases of the moon, which you could still, if you wanted to, you could leave and sleep, just constantly keep sleeping, but I think that there's other activities you could be doing. And so while yes, you could run back to your coffin and just hop in and out of it 8 times to get the full moon again, and most players are probably going to spend their time in a more constructive way throughout the it's not really a week because it's 8 nights, but throughout the week, they'll spend their time doing other stuff if they're worried about conflict and stuff within the dark forest. The dark forest proper is its own level, but it has a unique mechanic to it with the piecing to the zones together. For now, I have the foundation of that in there. It loads the first zone, but I need to create more zones so that I can properly have them stitched together and then reshuffle them. So the core of it's in there. That was part of what I did in this past month, but it needs further expansion, and then better testing once I have a full set of zones that I can play around with. And then the last major thing I worked on this past month was player progression, and I spent about a week on this, doing having the player earn experience and leveling, and then having the experience bar reset to a new greater amount in order to achieve the next level. That all works. It is in there. It needs balancing, right? So that's and this will be a continual process throughout development. How much experience should you get for each activity? How much experience is needed for each level, and then, but the system behind it is there and functions, and it displays within the inventories screen. So if I open up the player inventory, I can see what level I am, how much experience I have, how much I need for the next level. Now, during this, I also went and I did an initial kind of layout for the skills menu and the research menu, or kind of the skills tree and the tech tree that are going to be in the game. Now for the technologies, you're going to spend gold and influence, more so influence. Influence will be the primary currency for unlocking new technologies, and it will give you access to more recipes, more workstations, so you can progress further in the game. Not all of them will be necessary, but they're all going to help you out with achieving the end goals of restoring the castle. For the skills, doing this was actually just doing the layout, because the skills themselves and the technologies themselves, they're not implemented yet. This is just kind of going through the menus for them and what options are going to be available. But just going through this process, especially for the skills, helped me rethink what I had originally planned. Because I had or I already had technologies and skills that I came up with during the design phase months ago. But now that the game is kind of developed and I'm realizing, things like scope and stuff like that, and some of the tweaks to gameplay and design that have happened in other areas. For the skills, there were some that were clearly going to be overpowered, and there were some that I just didn't seem to add anything. They were there just to take up space. Now it seemed so. I removed a lot of them, and so for the skills, there's 5 categories, and I'm gonna forget one or two, but it's like there's crafting, like a social one, which is based on like your interactions with at the inn. There's like a farming one, a combat one, and then I'm forgetting what the 5th one is. But each one has 3 skills that you can unlock, and they're all going to be passive perks that just make you slightly more powerful. And then obviously when combined, you become more and more powerful. I think, during this, it made me realize, I was a little overly optimistic on, and made, the skills in particular a little bloated, and that's why I cut it back, and everything that's there now I think is meaningful and impactful, and so even though I haven't implemented them yet, just doing the menu allowed me to more critically think about the skills that will be in there. So now the next step is obviously to implement them and have them be purchasable, and then apply to whatever their effect is. But that was it for player progression. It doesn't sound like a lot, right? It's a couple of menus, well, really 3 menus, because I also connected a bunch of stuff in the inventory menu that wasn't previously connected when I was doing the experience bar and stuff like that. But it really has helped focus the future of design of the game. And so what I mean by that is, I think this brought to my attention that a lot of the initial design was focusing on longevity of the game in terms of hours of gameplay to create perceived value. And I need to pare that back a little bit as I move forward. I want to avoid what I run into. I love life sim and farm sim games, but often in them, I hit a point where it just starts to feel like a grind to get to the end. I've done it all, I've seen it all, and I've done it several times over and over again, and it just starts to feel repetitive. And so, if I can, and this will come out in alpha testing and beta testing later on, is figuring out how to do a smooth landing, where about the time where that sets in is where the game ends. And so I'll have to balance accordingly as I get feedback for that. But just as I approach things, right, make sure I'm not putting things in that aren't necessary just to expand on stuff. Like it should be, everything should be meaningful. And none of this is, new information. I've heard it all before. If you watch other devlogs, I'm sure you've heard it all before. But right, I mean, I just did it. It's easy for some of this to slip in there, and for you to lose focus on that. So, just by doing the player progression stuff, it made me realize that I had already been falling into that trap of adding more content for the sake of adding more content. And I need to be careful of that. I want the player to reach the end of the game, and for the all the euphoria and stuff that you feel when you finish, to be from the fact that they feel accomplished, not because they feel relieved that they just got through this grind fest at the end. And that's what I've got for this one. Again, my name's Peter. I'm the solo developer behind Growlery Games. I typically do a video a month. just covering the progress of my studio and whatever project I'm actively working on, which right now is Blood Builder. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.